It's time for the Freeman and Fox podcast with your host, Ed and Jeff. Sit back, relax, and listen to the fellas talk about the hottest issues in sports and sports entertainment. And make sure to follow the brothers on Twitter at the Sports Bros. Now, here's Freeman and Fox.
Welcome to another edition of the Freeman and Fox podcast. Thanks for joining us once again for episode 3 here. E.W. Freeman.
Jeff Fox in the box.
And we're bringing it to you live on the eve of the divisional playoffs of your NFL football. A lot has happened since the last time we talked. Nick Saban has been crowned the king of college football yet again. We've got a coaching hire, of course, here in the Miami Dolphins. And, we've had some firings as well, but a lot has happened. But we want to hit on one particular incident or one particular thing that happened in last week's game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. What a game it was. It had the whole world, the football world, and fans talking the day after because of the way it ended and how the game was pretty much the whole way through.
It's a bloodbath.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I like our guest in the podcast today, Jason Whitlock, joins us here inside Freeman and Fox, the podcast. He's called it a old school 1990s inner city football game between LA teams. We'll talk to him about that. Jason Whitlock joins us. You can find him at j.school is the new website, and of course, on Fox Sports 1. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
You feeling especially good today now that the Rams are coming back to L.A.?
You know, it's funny. I grew up in Indianapolis. We didn't have the Colts when I was a kid. And so I was a huge Los Angeles Rams fan.
Wow.
Lawrence McCutcheon, the running back James Harris, the quarterback. I think he was, the only black quarterback in the league at that time. And Isaiah Robertson, the middle linebacker, and Jack Youngblood, defensive end. I once, during the summer when we weren't in school, I once wore a Los Angeles Rams Jack Youngblood jersey for 18 straight days. My mother had to beat it off of me.
Wow. And for those that don't know, Jack Youngblood was one bad boy.
Man. So you're happy. So you're cool with these guys with the move and everything coming back, going back to L.A.
Yeah, it's just going to add energy and excitement to a city that's full of energy and excitement. And for, someone like me that loves football, it makes, Inglewood just a short drive for me to get to the stadium and get to the games. And so just makes it easier for me to stay abreast of the National Football League.
Of the other two teams out there that are mentioned to be moving to L.A., San Diego or Oakland, any preference on who you would want to share that stadium with the L.A. Rams?
Either one is fine. The Chargers, to me, make the most sense. But, I'm good either way. You can bring the Raiders back here. We can put the NWA caps back on. And so I'm good either way. More football, the better.
That's it. That's good. More football, the better. Jason Whitlock joins us here at Freeman and Fox podcast. All right, so you've written an article here, and you can find it at j.school. I love that. And by the way, for those who don't know, J-School is a short term for journalism school for those who went to college and went to journalism or went to the major of journalism. You wrote the article. It's called Mike Tomlin, Marvin Lewis Owe Us an Apology. And, of course, this is on the heels of what happened last weekend, a game where Cincinnati, we could say, kind of had it in the bag a little bit. But, hey, when you've got Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin on the other side, you can never, ever sleep. Everybody knows what happens there. We saw a lot of penalties. We saw a lot of bad blood. We saw a lot of penalties that weren't thrown, coaches doing all sorts of uncoached-like things. Tell us, for those who haven't read it, give us where you're coming from. What I guess gave you the fuel to go ahead and say, that Marvin Lewis and Coach Mike Tomlin both owe the league, I guess, or us as football fans an apology.
Well, let's start with, Marvin Lewis is probably my favorite coach in the league. I think he's underrated. I give him the benefit of the doubt for his playoff record because of the circumstances. I think coaching in Cincinnati, Andy Dalton not ascending to the level he needed to get to, just getting to the playoffs as consistently as the Bengals have. I've been really impressed with Marvin Lewis. He has struggled, clearly, with a handful of low-character players that he struggles to control. And then as it relates to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, I'm a big Ben fan. And always am rooting for him to get more Super Bowls because I think he's actually the best quarterback of this era, even better than Tom Brady, in my opinion. Again, the accomplishments don't stack up. You can't make that argument. But I root for Big Ben. And I just feel like the Steelers have underachieved, even though they've won a Super Bowl and been to one with Tomlin and Big Ben. But, again, I root for Tomlin and Marvin Lewis. That performance that they put on Saturday, given where the National Football League is with the concussion issue, given where it is with the safety issue, given where it is with all the momentum of people questioning football's place in American society, is it too highly valued? Is this a brutal sport that should not be America's national pastime? Football, by some people, is trying to be pushed into the corner that boxing was. And so if you know all of this is going on, if you know there's all this negative momentum going against football, you can't put on a football game that is that chaotic, I'm going to be politically incorrect, but it looked ghetto, man, and everybody knows it. It looked like the two teams were ready to legitimately try to destroy each other and break out into a Pistons-Pacers brawl. And it was just not the right look for the National Football League, and it's a poor reflection on the head coaches, particularly, in my opinion, Mike Tomlin. His assistant coaches were out of control, from Mike Munchak to Joey Porter, out of control. And Tomlin has a history with this, with his own lack of discipline, interfering with a kick returner and getting fined $100K by the NFL, scraps, arguments, really contentious arguments with opposing players. This guy carries himself like an emotional football player rather than a head coach. And we had security guards on the field before the game. We had fans throwing objects from the stands. We had a linebacker for the Steelers lead with the crown of his head and damn near decapitate Gio Bernard. And then you had Vontaze Burfict doing what Vontaze Burfict does. Yeah. It was a hot mess. And these guys need to be aware of this. And again, we can sit around and pretend like it didn't happen. But if you read what Peter King wrote for Sports Illustrated, if you read what Mike Florio wrote for Pro Football Talk, these guys, King and Florio, I reference them because they are media representatives of the league. They work for NBC and Sunday Night Football. They have direct connects to Roger Goodell and the most powerful people in the National Football League. They're not writing these things. They are about that particular game and why it was a bad look for the NFL if it's not reflective of what ownership and the commissioner's office feel about that game. And so someone needs to shake Mike Tomlin and Marvin Lewis and say, hey, man, this is a bad look for you individually and for other black coaches.
Well, Jason,
go ahead.
Well, let's take a step back first. I mean, evidently there's bad blood between these two teams historically, okay? How much ultimately, how much can you blame or should be blamed blame on the coach? How much blame should be placed on the coach when it comes to those matters that, of course, guys are going to talk smack. I mean, this isn't the Carolina Panthers walking around the field with baseball bats or anything like that, but evidently there's history and there's shady characters on either team that, can help, I guess, build up that history. But how much blame can you really place on the coaches for things that are happening ancillary kind of to the game? I get it when you're talking about in game, and if it's like third quarter, coaches need to talk to their players and say, hey, you guys need to settle down. You're going to end up losing this game for us, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I'm 48, and I think everybody on the podcast is old enough have been watching the league for a couple of decades.
Yep.
The bad history between the Steelers and the Bengals is in the last decade.
Right.
This ain't the Raiders and the Chiefs from the old AFL, all that. This is Tomlin has been with the Steelers, I think, for 9 years, and Marvin Lewis has been with the Bengals for 13 years. This is their history. This is when Tomlin, after the game, says, I think we represented what AFC North football was all about. That's the AFC North that they have created, and it's in Baltimore, too, with John Harbaugh and Ray Lewis when Ray was there. And I'm a huge Ray Lewis fan. I'm not really criticizing him, but, again, they have been playing this very highly personal style of football in the AFC North, where and again, it's just not that time. Things have moved on. It can't be tolerated at this moment. They're trying to conduct business. And I think if you read Peter King's piece, what he said, there's a fine line between, hey, being super competitive and trying to have a physical football game, but not crossing that line where you're actually out there trying to hurt each other. You're just trying to play a good football game. And it looked like these guys were actually out there trying to legitimately do damage to each other. And, again, it goes back to last year when I saw this recent history. Le'Veon Bell gets put out by Reggie Nelson and hit to the knee. The Steelers again, it was a clean hit by Reggie Nelson, in my opinion, but Steelers highly upset about that. If you go look at their regular season games this year, out of hand, hard to control by the officials. If you look at the trash that was being talked over social media leading up to the game, everybody could see this coming, and it was up to those two head coaches to get their teams under control and set a tone. We're not about to embarrass ourselves or the National Football League, and we're going to put on a game that's respectful. And again, what Peter King wrote, I got to give him credit because he hinted at things that are legitimate. He's looking at that game and like, man, these guys, it's just like, they're really trying to hurt each other rather than play a good game and just make this money. And I'm watching it as a black man going, man, look at us trying to hurt each other instead of play a respectful game and get this money. And it's like, that's why I played the card of, man, this looks like the Bloods and the Crips going at it and neighborhoods going at it and people playing for keeps rather than playing for competition and winning and let's get this money, and at the end of this, we're all family when it's over. That's not what that game looked like, and the NFL just doesn't want it at that time. And me as a black man, I don't want it. I don't want to see that. We see enough of that in the streets. We don't need to see it in the football field.
You know what, Jason? When I watched that game, I was at a party. I didn't know how intense it was because I was actually DJing, but we had the game on a big screen. And my initial thought was, wow, this is a hard-hitting throwback football game. It reminded me of the Steelers and the Raiders from the 70s when the Pittsburgh receivers really wanted to press charges. They wanted to press charges against what they called the criminal element of the Raider backfield. Remember Jack Tatum and those guys? There was some real bad blood between those teams. And when you mentioned the movie Concussion, which I saw, I don't know if you saw it, but if you see that movie, you figure out what's going on in the NFL today. I thought I could see the correlation you were making right there. It was a bad reflection on both teams. And the NFL just doesn't want that.
What they have to understand is throwback jerseys are profitable and popular, but no throwback games are not.
Right.
So they've moved past that era. We don't want to see throwback football. There are idiots like me that grew up playing throwback football. But it's like we've been educated, and the public has been educated that, all right, that's what we did back then, but we don't do that now. We play a different style of football. And so it was an inappropriate look for the National Football League, and it could have ramifications in terms of people questioning. And again, you can say, oh, we shouldn't talk about it out loud, but trust me, people are talking about it in private. See, man, you got black coaches in charge. Mm-hmm. Look at how out of hand this is. That discussion is being had.
The comparison to the malice at the palace between the Pacers and the Pistons, you talked about the uncomfortability of Boomer Esiason and Tony Gonzalez and who was it, Jim Nance, I think, were calling the game. They were very critical of the play on the field. Then we saw the situation with Lovie Smith and Tampa. Granted, it's not related, but when you look at the fact that we're talking about 3 black head coaches, it's just not a good look. So I can see why you made that comparison about, both coaches letting the game get out of hand or their teams get out of hand. Were you trying to say, Jason, that, it's hard enough for a black coach already? Don't make it even more difficult by allowing this kind of stuff to happen.
Man, we have moved into an era that I'm really uncomfortable with. I think it's really inappropriate, but as African Americans, I don't think we focus enough on the way we used to. Because we used to think about hey, man, I'm out here representing everybody, trying to open doors for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so let me carry myself in a way that opens doors for the people coming up behind me. And we've now moved to a point where people think, screw that. Just do you. And anybody that says that's respectability politics and blah, blah, blah. And that's all garbage because other minority groups, that's how they have worked their way out of poverty, by banding together and trying to represent each other and trying to create a pathway for the people coming up behind them. And it's like we think, oh, that's over. We tried that, or we've done enough of that, and we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to worry about who else we're representing. And so, I mean, again, Marvin Lewis is certainly of my era. He's a little bit older, and Mike Tomlin's a little bit younger than me, but they're both old enough to know better and to know that they're standing on other coaches' shoulders, and they need to be making sure that other coaches can stand on their shoulders. I felt like Hugh Jackson was the best assistant coach in the National Football League this year, and here he is, to me, totally 100% ready.
Yeah, I agree.
To be a head coach again, and he just got the Browns job.
Yep.
But the Browns job is probably the worst job in the National Football League.
Yes, it is. It's where coaches go to die.
Yeah, and so, but here he is, the best assistant coach, should have had his pick. Hey, maybe the Giants.
Thank you.
But he somehow he doesn't have his pick, and I'm not blaming Tomlin and Marvin Lewis, but I do sit here and wonder if they had played a classy, super competitive football game on Saturday. Would Hugh Jackson be the Browns coach, or would he be the Giants coach, riding with Eli Manning, the guy with 2 Super Bowls? Would he have got the same hookup that Mike Tomlin got, getting to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, rather than going to the Browns, who are being run by analytics people that don't know anything about football, have no QB, and coaches go there to die?
Jason Whitlock on with us here on Freeman Fox, the podcast. I think the juxtaposition, think about this. Fox and I did a podcast earlier this week or last week where we talked about the Rooney Rule, which we always do around this time of year, actually on Black Monday or Black Tuesday, however you want to call it. And we talked about, just in general, how African Americans, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in everyday life, you've got to be 5 to 10 times better than your counterpart. If it's a white American, if it's an Asian American, whoever, you've got to be 5 to 10 times better to get, if there's 2 positions, 1 black person, 1 white person, you got to have, some outstanding, traits there to get that job. And here you are in your article, you talk about how Tomlin and Lewis, 2 of the longest tenured, I guess, black coaches out there, obviously, have to maintain and have the best type of decorum as those coaches. Like, once you get that position, you've got to be 5 to 10 times cleaner, if you will, than your counterparts to keep those jobs. And I got to ask you this, though. And although what we saw was on the field was pretty messed up, and some people may agree or disagree with whether the coaches had too much to do with it. The players obviously play a big part in it. But when we talk about just football and the sanctity of football and the rules of the game on and off the field, what's more egregious, though, how Mike and Marvin handled the game, or can somebody look at how Bill Belichick has been handling the Patriots with Spygate and Deflategate and all these cheating accusations? What do you think is more egregious?
Well, I think it's like saying, hey, there's rape and there's murder. They're both bad. They're both things that need to be policed.
Right.
And so as it relates to Belichick, though, what I will say is there's a ton of pushback on Belichick. They've had draft picks taken, fines levied, players suspended. The media routinely lights into Belichick, calls him Bill a cheat. Sean Payton has been shredded for the stuff that went on down in New Orleans with paying fines and bounties. So the media, we're very comfortable criticizing white coaches for the BS that they do in pursuit of victories. We're not comfortable criticizing Mike Tomlin. And as it relates,
Why is that?
Again, I'll get back to that. I love Marvin Lewis. I'm just telling you, I really do. He's my favorite coach. Mm-hmm. But he has had a long-running problem from Chad Johnson to Pac-Man Jones with low character, hard-to-control guys that set a poor discipline standard in Cincinnati, and he's gotten away with it and been there for 13 years. And deservedly so, because the guy produces victories, and he's gotten better. But I don't want to pretend like Mike Tomlin and Marvin Lewis are having to do 10 times as much as any of these other coaches, because as it relates to Mike Tomlin, man, this guy got put on coaching steroids. He 35 years old. He gets the best job in all of professional sports, in my opinion, and gets a young franchise quarterback. He was born on coaching third base.
Right.
That's the other reason why I'm holding him to a higher standard. He's been given all the tools. This is the dream job. They've had 3 coaches there. They're in their history. Noel, Cowher, and Tomlin. So he's been given a lot. And so we have a right to expect a lot more than what we're getting from him.
Well, Jason, you mentioned that the NFL desires a game that is marketed as family-friendly, and, it isn't the the UFC or boxing or whatever. But I don't know if you've been out there. You're on the West Side, so I don't know if you went to a Raiders 49ers preseason game at any point recently, to the point where they had to stop them. But this is a violent game, a very violent game. I know they want to clean it up. I go back to the movie Concussion and stuff, and there's so much dollars at stake. How clean can they make football, though? I thought it was a throwback game, but it's
be honest,
borderline, man.
Jason, this guy right here that's talking to you, he loves those type of games.
I like violence.
He does, yeah.
I like violence. I've just fallen in love with the National Hockey League.
Listen, I played the game, and I get it. I've been in a bench clearing brawl as a college football player. Mm-hmm. I get it. But again, this is a business decision the NFL is making, trying to put a facade of respect and sportsmanship and a lessening of the violence. They're trying to conduct business here. It's a television show. That's what football is, a television show. Yep. It's manipulated like any other television show. And the employees who are making a lot of money need to cooperate with the television show they're trying to put on. Again, it'll be very easy for people to put football in the boxing lane. America has never been comfortable with football as the national pastime. It wants baseball to be that. And so it has ascended to a place that America has never been comfortable with, and now with the concern about safeties and concussions and all that, they're in a position where they're going to get knocked off their pedestal if they're not careful. That's what the NFL is trying to avoid. It's in the best interest of the players if they want to make as much money as possible, and the coaches if they want to make as much money as possible, not to allow that to happen.
Let me ask you a question that's kind of off topic a little bit. We're talking about the violence associated with the game. You mentioned the malice at the Palace. Ed and I just went to a Florida Panthers hockey game. I don't know if you, but we got the hottest team in the league right now down here.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
They had a 13-game winning streak.
They
just
lost.
yeah.
They just lost, yeah. But they're in first place and they're doing pretty good. But I don't quite get the non-criticism of NHL hockey when it comes to violence. When you look at the NBA, there is a lot of I guess a microscope on it ever since the malice at the Palace. And then this article comes out that you wrote in regards to how the NFL is trying to get away from that type of an element. Yet the NHL sells it, and nobody calls them thugs or nobody focuses on the violence in hockey. There was a fight
where
after
the fights are sanctioned.
Yeah, there was a fight after the game last night. Like, what's the difference, Jason?
Now, let's keep it 100 here. This is three black dudes on a podcast talking hockey. And so,
I'm just
how
saying.
deep in the weeds are we on what's really going on in hockey and what's being discussed and blah blah? We're speculating. Right. And so,
but my
the
point
other
is
thing
this.
my other point is this: Biggie never lied when he said "more money, more problems."
Right.
Hockey doesn't come close to generating the interest or the money that the NFL does. So, of course, the NFL is going to be held to a different standard. No one is trying to get the money, the violence out of boxing and the brutality out of boxing because no one cares. Boxing has been diminished and discarded, and it's put off to the side. And Floyd Mayweather made some money, but boxing isn't near what it used to be. It used to be baseball and boxing in this country. Mm-hmm. But boxing so far down the totem pole, no one cares what those guys do to themselves. Hockey, so far down the totem pole, those of us in America, we don't care what they do. And so when you make the most money, again, a state senator doesn't get near as much criticism as the president of the United States. And that's the difference. Hockey's a state senator. The NFL is the president of the United States.
Okay, so this is not a race thing. This is not that, if they were more black players in the NHL and all of the violence was associated with it, they wouldn't be called thugs or whatever. So whenever we see incidents in the NBA, like the malice at the Palace, I'm just asking. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even speculate on what they call guys in hockey. I think they call them goons.
Yeah,
goons. Yeah,
and
goons.
That's the equivalent of thugs. And so they do use those words, and they do disparage players that are just goons and blah blah blah. It's been a long time. I used to live in Ann Arbor and used to pay a whole lot of attention to the Detroit Red Wings. But I just think we have fallen in love in America with the false equivalency. And I just think this is a false equivalency because I think the people that do follow hockey and follow it intensely, all the same words, they may be different. Maybe it's not thug, maybe it's goon, whatever. But the guys that just beat up people and do dumb stuff in hockey, they get ripped and they get fined and kicked out of the league. They had a guy in Detroit, Bob Probert, called him all, he was an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And then hockey doesn't have the stigma of the concussions either. I mean, you just said it. More money, more problems. Oh, and then folks are committing suicide and having problems later in age after they finish playing your game?
I tend to think those same issues are in hockey. It's just no one cares.
Really?
Yeah.
I know some guys who miss a few teeth here and there, but I haven't heard of any.
I guarantee you they got CTE problems and all that in hockey, but it's just no one cares. It's not the national pastime. That's a Canadian sport.
Okay. So basically, And I just wanted to compare the two because I thought
No.
that
It's
was an
great
interesting
conversation because these are the discussions that people are having at home, and it's nice to throw it out there and bat it around, push it around, and see where we land.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned again back to the article about Tomlin and Marvin Lewis. When you look at the microscope, I guess that's on them because you're saying these guys need to pretty much do better. It's like Ed and I when we got on radio, we got all kinds of calls and kudos from people locally, and we were like, geez, we're just a couple of guys on the radio, but it meant so much to a lot of people. And you're saying that how Lewis and Tomlin conduct themselves would mean a lot to future NFL head coaches. Is that fair that they have to be on such a microscope or that they have to toe such a fine line when maybe an Adam Gase or who's the other hotshot assistant? Whoever's out there.
Listen, I don't think we're asking them to go above and beyond. There's no same demands on other coaches. Again, that AFC North football they're playing, because the Bengals, this was very predictable. There was a reason they had guards on the field before the game. Everybody knew this was coming. And so you can point to other coaches and other teams. The expectations aren't there. Like, oh, when these two teams play, we better get extra guards and security on the field, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not asking them to go above and beyond. I'm asking them to do their job and take on the responsibility. They're making a lot of money. And particularly for Tomlin, he's the face of a historic franchise. And he has such a great opportunity to create other opportunities for other people if he handles his business. And I just don't think we're asking that much. Calm yourself down, calm your systems down, figure out a way to get the emotion and the energy out of them without crossing the lines. And their teams, particularly when they play each other, it just can't just be a coincidence. There's 3 or 4 black head coaches, and it just so happens the two teams that hate each other the most and can't control their emotions and try to kill each other happen to be the coaches led by black teams.
It's like a Martin Luther King Boulevard in every city in America.
Yeah.
It just happens to be the
Why is that?
In the black neighborhood,
Yeah.
Jason Whitlock joining us here. Remember to check him out. The website is j.school. Go ahead, Jeff.
One more thing, Jay. I almost lost my chain of thought right there, but the Rooney Rule and all of that, when we look at the microscope that's on these guys and we're looking at the fact there's only a few African-American head coaches in this league, and then we see Hugh Jackson, who I thought was the hottest assistant out there, and then he gets the worst NFL job. If I were to ask you, in your opinion, is the Rooney Rule working, or do they have to remix it sort of and come up with another type of a way that these guys are going to get a fair shot, and when they do get that shot, they'll be given adequate time, as their counterparts are, to have success?
What the history of the world teaches us is you have to create opportunities. They're rarely given. And so that's why, and look, the Rooney Rule's fine. I'm glad they have it. I support it. But the better way for black coaches is for Mike Tomlin and Marvin Lewis and Hugh Jackson to do their jobs at the highest level. Look, John Thompson does not get near the credit. This is what just enrages me about, we love talking about the Fab Five, and they represent that era of college basketball. So bogus. So bogus. John Thompson created something with his own hands at Georgetown University, Hoya Paranoia, carried him to a national championship, took care of Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo, Allen Iverson. Dude built something strong and black and powerful in Washington, D.C. And if you go look at college basketball, damn near every black coach that's ever gotten a job in college basketball can thank John Thompson for it. And the man don't get the credit he deserves for that. There was no black coaches. John Thompson did his thing at Georgetown, and all of a sudden they started popping up everywhere. Oh, Arkansas got Nolan Richardson. And, again, do your job. Handle your business. Represent the guy. Again, John Thompson, it's hard for me to ever say anything bad about John Thompson because he's a creator. And he was part of a bigger mission than just himself.
That's a great point. So basically, what these African-American head coaches must do is win. And win. I mean, and not
that's obvious.
Is win. But I mean that goes for everybody in the NFL. But I just don't think that we're playing on a level playing field, Jason. I don't know if we ever will be playing on a level playing field.
I'm not suggesting we're playing on a level playing field. I'm asking you to go through the history of the world and show me where the playing field has ever been level.
Right.
Yeah, I got you.
Through the history of the world. And I'm not just talking about for black people. Unfairness is a fact of life in America. If you believe in the Bible and believe the teaching of the Bible, ever since Eve gave Adam the apple, unfairness was set loose in the world. And so it's unfair to everybody.
Go ahead. Finish.
And so if there is no utopia, and so we can sit and, oh my God, I wish things in China. Where is that where the playing field is level? Let's move over there.
Small island in the Pacific that nobody's discovered yet.
With that being said, does Lovie Smith get another shot? Because there was outrage on social media when he was let go by Tampa Bay. It seems that despite the 8-24 record, he's well respected around the National Football League.
And seemed to be on his way to something.
Let me tell you where you didn't see any outrage. Social media, to me, is a joke and a false read of what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Until I hear something from Jameis Winston, I'm not tripping off of Lovie because, trust me, if Jameis Winston was like, hey, look, don't fire this coach, he'd be the coach.
Wow.
You have a very good point. And I thought about that. I was like, I saw some Tampa Bay players speaking out, and I didn't know if it was just because he's the quarterback, he's the face, quote unquote, of the franchise, he's young, or
the All-Pro
linebackers
spoke out.
Yeah, what's going on here? What's
Look, the offensive coordinator was about to get a job, and to me, clearly, somebody talked to Jameis. It was like, why was the season so good? Barbara, can we really let this offensive coordinator go?
Right.
And he's like, hell no.
Wow.
Interesting stuff there. Jason Whitlock joining us here at the Freeman and Fox podcast. Our good buddy. You can find him online at j.school. It is his blog, all of his writings, and some guest writings as well. You can also catch him on Fox Sports 1. You're ready for this weekend of football. Real quickly, who do you like?
Man, I'm on pins and needles right now thinking about Cam and Russell Wilson.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
I'm just on pins and needles. It's and I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't like the way Seattle played, but I think that's the cold. And so we can see something special here because, statistically, I think Russell Wilson, was the best quarterback, but based on quarterback rating and whatnot. And then we know with our own two eyes, Cam was the best quarterback. And so we're about to see something we've never seen before. The two best quarterbacks are black, and they're about to go head-to-head in a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got Roethlisberger and Manning going at it. That might be a sloppy game with, one quarterback that's, I guess, playing on half a leg and two ribs, and the other quarterback is just barely hanging on. Who do you like in that one?
I guess, man, that's a tough. I'm going to go with Denver's at home with a defense that's hellified. Maybe no Antonio Brown.
Right.
Yeah, so I like Denver.
All right. What's the other one? Arizona and Green Bay?
Arizona in a landslide. I think Bruce Arians, this is his time. He's getting the best out of Carson Palmer. Green Bay, they did all they could do last week. KC, New England.
New England. Yeah. That's
the first game of the weekend.
A tough one. I'm a Chiefs fan.
That's right.
11 straight victories.
Kansas City Star, baby.
11 straight victories, but it's hard for me to bet against Belichick.
Man,
there you have it.
He's the genius. He is Belichick.
I'm not going to pick any of them. It's a tough. Every one of those games, except possibly for the Arizona game, I think it's going to be really, really hard to pick.
Well, it's safe to say that this weekend's game should be a lot better than some of last weekend's games. So,
yeah.
That's
well, y'all know now that I'm free, you can call me anytime.
Yes, sir.
It's less of a hassle. So I'm always here for you.
Hey, we appreciate it, man. We appreciate it. We appreciate the support.
We appreciate you, Jason Whitlock. We'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you.
And that was Jason Whitlock on with us here on the Freeman and Fox podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Look out for the podcast. One coming at you early next week, right after all of the divisional playoff games this coming weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what else the Dolphins have got going on. And we'll slowly get into some more Heat talk, too, because
we're going to find Mike Wallace. We're looking for you, Mike Wallace.
Basketball is steadily getting hotter, getting towards midseason for those guys. So things will be turning around and getting more active here real soon. All right, thank you all for listening. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at The Sports Bros, Facebook at The Sports Brothers as well.
All right, that's how you catch up with The Sports Brothers.
Talk to you later. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Freeman and Fox podcast. Be on the lookout for the next episode coming soon. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at The Sports Bros.